Okie dokie. Yes. I've been looking forward to talking about this, as it does excite me quite a bit. Not going to lie, quite a bit. Let's go. Oh, that's Ask Chunt. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. There's a Pip and Pip channel, Christopher. Yes. There we go. All right. So, let me take a breath because where do I start? So, DC versus Marvel. This has been a thing for 20-odd years, right? All the way back in the 70s. You know, there were crossovers happening every now and then. And it was quite common between Marvel and DC, and it was great to see them rubbing shoulders over the years of, hey, you know, oh, let's make this character fight this character. We put it to a fan vote of like, hey, let's do a big event and all these Marvel and DC characters will fight each other, and the fans get to vote, like the readers get to write in and send their votes in and choose the winners and all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of that stuff is gone these days. We don't get it anymore, right? So last year, this is the Jim Lee cover for the DC versus Marvel Omnibus. So I have this book. It's on my shelf, but it's not that cover. And I am so glad I got it. You can still get it on Amazon if you like, and just check your local stores as well. Plug to your local comic book shops wherever possible. If you want to get all the history, I think pretty much every crossover from the early or late 70s, I should say, through the 80s, and I think there might even be some 90s ones in the early 90s maybe in there. I'm not too sure about all the dates in there, but it's around like when Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and then there was a bit of a transition time where Ben Reilly was Spider-Man, and that's my Spider-Man. So anyway, if you're a fan of Marvel or DC, it's a no-brainer to buy. It's a piece of history as well. So that sold really, really well, apparently, right? And there's another one called DC versus Marvel, the Amalgam Omnibus, right? So the Amalgam Omnibus is, I think I mentioned it in the last Chunkcast as well, but the Amalgam Omnibus, just to recap it ever so slightly, was another crossover where there's these two cosmic beings that represented DC and Marvel and their universes, right? And then they had a disagreement or whatever, and they said, well, let's pit our universes together, and whoever wins decides the victor, whatever, you know. And so it was just that there was just one of those, you know, grab your action figures and smash them together kind of a comic book story. It was awesome, man. And well, I love that stuff. Anyway, so during that course of that story, things went haywire and the universes merged. Right, so that's where you get Batman crosses Wolverine, gets Dark Claw, right? You get Superboy crosses Spider-Man, you get Spider-Boy, and he's got guns that shoot webs, of course, and stuff like that. Super Soldier, you know, Superman and Captain America, etc., right? And that omnibus that they've put out sold out, right? I was flat out getting a copy. I won't waste too much time talking about it, but Amazon screwed me hardcore on that and cancelled it on me at least 2 or 3 times. And I had it pre-ordered back in October 2024. And they cancelled on me twice. So I've had to find another option because there's been almost nowhere to get it. I found a website, and shout out to the Culture Shock Collectibles community. Chris, I believe his name was, posted a link to a comic book website that he uses that's based in America. And they still had some stock of that Amalgam Omnibus. So I hadn't heard of it before. And a couple of us took a shot and put our orders through. And we're all like waiting with bated breath for shipping details. And when we both got them, there's 2 of us in the group. Dave's Cave, I believe his name is. Great channel, by the way. Check it out. Does action figures reviews, really good. So yeah, we both like, yeah, look, we got our shipping note. It's awesome. So it's coming this week. And I should have it hopefully by the next Chunkcast, I'll have it in hand. And to me, that's another special piece of comic book history. Most people don't care for it because it's like, whatever. But I think it's awesome because we've never seen anything like it since by any company, any of the big comic book businesses out there, right? And it's got multiple comics in there and from various crossover of characters conjoined, all that kind of stuff. And it's awesome. And then after that, there was another one called Justice League of America Cross Avengers, right? And they put that book out. They reprinted that book, I think in 2022. It was a fundraiser because George Perez was going through some health issues, and and I'm putting that lightly. And the fans got to rally together and got a publisher together and wrangled the rights to get that book published. Now I missed out on that because I wasn't around at the time to in the headspace to acknowledge it and get ahead of it before it was too late. Otherwise, I would have loved to get that. So anyway, so those things sell out really quick, right? But there's a lot of rights issues and struggles to make this happen, where I've heard from credible sources that these omnibuses, these recent ones, were near impossible to get happen. They probably won't happen again. So that's pretty big. It's a big call, right? And some of the big names on both companies have said similar things, right? Now, whether that's just some hype comments to get people to buy it, probably. But I wouldn't put it past that truth, right? The amount of the amount of companies that have traded hands of these two with different character rights and that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, here we are. So the success of these Omnis has drummed up a lot of interest and community comments about when is Marvel doing another one? How come we haven't had another crossover in like over a decade or more, right? And part of that is Dan Didio from DC used to be the head there, right? And he's gone on stage and said he's the reason why there hasn't been a crossover since, because he didn't think he said basically I would only do that, or he thinks it's out of desperation if you do a crossover, and he's the reason why we hadn't had any. Because he said, no, we don't need them, right? Essentially, I'm paraphrasing what he says, not quoting him directly. But that's pretty much what he said. So that sucks. I mean, you're an idiot for one. I mean, that would, anyway. Why? Like, yeah, that would sell, and I understand, you want something like that to be a rarity, right? Not something that happens every couple of years or whatever, because it kind of gets old, right? Whereas now, it's a big deal because it doesn't happen. And for this potentially to happen is a big deal, right? So recently, there was a Comic Pro panel, very recent in the last month, featuring, so there was the editors-in-chief of both Marvel and DC. I've got the names. CB Cebulski. I want to hopefully I've not ruined that. From Marvel. Basically saying, hey, another crossover. What's the quote here? Another crossover, a modern crossover. Yeah. They were talking about crossovers between Marvel and DC because both of them are on stage. So she says, he. Oh my God, sorry. She is over at DC. CB, I'm just going to call him CB. He says, another crossover, a modern crossover. Are you up for it? To the crowd. And apparently the crowd cheered like nuts about the tease. And then he turned to DC Comics Marie Javins, and she said, I guess we have no choice but to do this, after hearing the crowd and putting it out there. And then she followed to ask if they could get this done by 2025, or within 2025. And CB from Marvel says, they'll put together some creators and some character ideas, right? So from what I gathered by that, and I've seen and heard some audio on that, it sounded tongue-in-cheek, like they know, they're both knowing, and they both understand people want this. So that was cool. You don't often get Marvel and DC heads at the table at the same time, right? That's a big deal. But yeah, this isn't a huge surprise, right? Considering how those Omnis have sold so fast, so quickly, and the hype around those, like the social media presence that those Omnis had in the comic book community, and the want and drive and ask for that limited edition Justice League and Avengers crossover collection. I hope that's next. I know there's a lot of legal loopholes in that one to have that happen back in 2022 from a fundraiser through another publisher called the Hero Initiative, right? But surely they can see the numbers and the hype on these two Omnis selling out. They'll just, hey, let's make it happen. But okay, now that I've given you all that pretext, right? Why I think this has been Easter egged for a while, or maybe it's been in the works for a while. I don't know. But this reminded me of a part of the story at the end of Doomsday Clock. So this is in DC. Doomsday Clock was a Justice League or DC Universe crossover with the Watchmen, right? Yeah, 2019, 2020. And in the last issue, Dr. Manhattan, there's a sequence where I'll just put it up on screen so you can see it. Yeah, this one. I'll zoom in. So Dr. Manhattan looked into Superman's future, right? And how do I say this properly? So the final issue, it's referencing events in the DC universe, well, that hadn't happened yet, right? And hadn't come to pass. But it's a massive tease to something called the Secret Crisis, right? And my head's in the way of the last panel, but I'll read it anyway. So what this says is, it is January 2026. The timeline is restored. And Earth 5G is born. So this is, I won't even go into what that is. It was a failed initiative from DC, which is going to be called 5G, like 5th generation. And they're going to introduce a whole new slew of new characters, and it didn't go well. It is June 17th, 2026, right? So that's next year. Superman goes on a quest to find Bruce Wayne's lost daughter so she can save Bruce's son. On July 10th, 2030, which is not too far away, 2025 is a bit early from what they're saying, according to this. Dr. Manhattan's probably wrong. July 10th, 2030, the Secret Crisis begins, throwing Superman into a brawl across the universe with Thor himself and a green behemoth stronger than even Doomsday, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. In its wake, Superman's timeline shifts forward again. Okay, so that top right box is the hype right there, right? Now, I'm not saying that Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's book, The Doomsday Clock, has anything to do with this current announcement that they're doing a crossover, but this was a big call when this came out. I remember this page going around the internet going, holy moly, what the hell? Oh my God. And like, this is awesome, man. I mean, Thor, they can say Thor in this comic because Thor is, Thor's not owned by Marvel. Like, Thor is a bloody deity, for God's sakes. But Green Behemoth, right? That's a easy way to say Hulk, right? So that's awesome, right? So imagine that, they're putting this tease in there, right? And 2030 was so far away. It's 10 years away from when this book came out. So, of course, yeah, hey, look, a fun little throwaway line, right? But here we are, not yet 5 years later after this book comes out, and now there's talks of a DC Marvel crossover this year, right? So I thought that was cool, right? And the next one is, I'll bring this up. This one is very cool. This is from Donny Cates and Nick Klein's run on Thor. So this was back in 2020. So it's around the same time, right? So this already makes me feel like these creators are buddy-buddy, and they thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool, this year when we're working on these books, let's drop some Easter eggs, right? But this one's even more crazy because it's so blatant without crossing that IP copyright line, right? So how do I explain this? So Thor in this run had just recently become the new All-Father. I've actually got the Omnis down there. I can't wait to read it. And he was forced to become Galactus' new herald to help this cosmic world devourer, Galactus, fight this star plague known as the Black Winter. Turns out the Black Winter is the same thing, or the same blight that killed Galactus' original universe before coming into our one. Anyway, so Thor, I think it's Thor, has this vision during his quest. Yeah, Thor gets a vision from what I hear. I haven't read the book, but I'm just from what I've heard over the years. Thor gets a vision from this event And you can see the top panel, right? It says your gods will arrive, and this you can't see it, but yes, you can on screen. That's clearly the Daily Planet, right? And Superman, right? Right. This isn't a Marvel book, right? And the next panel, a sun god, a god of emerald light, a god of dark, perhaps, a god of the ocean, of speed, of strength, right? So you can see Superman shooting there. There's Flash running along the road there, and you've got a streak of green light. That's Green Lantern, obviously, and like a little black smudge up there is obviously Batman just trying to follow these gods. And then the last panel down here, it just gets darker. It's cut off at the bottom there from how I've cropped this screen, but it says this universe, like so many before it, is protected by a league of gods, many of them as powerful as those you have always known and marveled at. Right? And you can see them like going off into the distance as the darkness encompasses that universe. So what this is looking like is what it's showing us is that this universe is obviously befell by this dark black winter as well, right? And just giving us a short insight into maybe DC's universe, right? I think that's so cool, right? I love this stuff, man. It's like, it's so on the nose without getting in any trouble, but it's giving comic book fans like, oh my God, like, you know, how cool is that? Like this acknowledgement of each other's, like, you know, Marvel and DC, they're the big ones, right? They're the ones that have done it all, right? And we love all these characters and stuff, and I do particularly. So I love this, man. I can't wait to actually read this in the book when I get to it and just read how it's played out and part of the story. I know it's just this, you know, just this page, but I can't wait to see it in the course of the story, right? But now, like knowing now that we're potentially getting to, I'll go back to this, a proper crossover. I hope they call it Secret Crisis, which is what the Doomsday Clock called it. It's such a cool name for one, because it crosses over like Secret Wars for Marvel that's Marvel's big event name, Secret Wars, right? And Infinite Crisis, right, is on DC's side. So Infinite Crisis or Crisis on Infinite Earths, you know, or Final Crisis, like it's always a crisis, like something crisis or crisis something over at DC, right? And it's always Secret something or Secret Wars or whatever over at Marvel. So it just makes sense if they're going to do a crossover like this for it to be Secret Crisis, right? It just says it all. It says everything you need to know that this is a DC and Marvel crossover, right? Oh my God, it just blows my brain just thinking about it. Like, I think now's the right time, right? Because Marvel aren't what it used to be, or isn't what it used to be, right? Particularly in the comics, and the movies have fallen on its face time and time again. DC just failed its cinematic universe. The last couple of years, it's really picked itself up in the comic book space. Some good stories coming out of that. Both of them are pumping out omnibuses like there's no tomorrow, and a lot of people are buying into their old stories, right? Because the new stories just aren't finding as many audiences as they used to. DC is, particularly in the last 12 months, and particularly 6 or 8 months. It's definitely found a strong audience, like Green Lantern and Batman and whatnot. And Superman's been doing really, really good too, under Josh Williamson. And I can't wait I want to read that Josh Williamson's run if it ever gets collected. I want to read that. It looks awesome. Anyway, getting back to it. But Marvel doesn't seem to, for me anyway, since like Jonathan Hickman and all that, that whole era seems to have just fallen off the wayside, where the comics are now being dictated by the movies, right? And it's just being handicapped by that. And I think they need to step away from that. And I have said before, like if you want to know what's going to happen in Marvel, the movies, right? Just look at what the comic books are doing. You know, what the solicits are. If you read the solicits for the next 6 months to a year, it might give you a bit of insight as to what Marvel's planning to do in their cinematic universe going forward. But so I don't like that. I wish the comic books were removed from the movies, you know, and the movies should follow the comics, right? Like whatever the comics are doing, put the story first is what I'm saying. Put the creators in-house in front of the right characters, in front of the right books. Make them great again, like they used to be. Hire good writers, great artists, all that stuff, instead of, you know, desperate hires or whatever they're doing these days. And then we'll have epic stories to be told on the big screen again, just like what Marvel did for 10 years, where they pulled from all the best, all the most famous stories, you know, and they made billions from it. Anyway, so I think like now's the perfect time that they both need that injection of hype, right? I mean, how amazing would that be that this Marvel DC crossover in 2025 is the start to something amazing, or more regular crossovers. Maybe it's a point where after that crisis that it gives Marvel a chance to reboot properly. I don't know if they'll want to. There's been talk about Marvel rebooting in comics, but I don't know if they'll want to have their Marvel universe rebooted tied to anything to do with DC. I don't think they'll do that, but that would be so awesome. Like at the end of Secret Crisis, rebooted Marvel universe. Or maybe both of them. Maybe they both agree. Like, hey, look, I don't think they'll do that. It's probably industry suicide or something. I don't know, but maybe they're like, hey, look, after the Secret Crisis, we're both going to start over and let's see what happens, you know? Anyway, I'm really excited about this. As you can tell, I've been speaking at length about it. Get hype. I can't wait. Apparently it's only going to be 2 one-shots for now, right? I don't know how big those one-shots are going to be either. I don't have any other details about how many pages each one-shot are going to have, but I think that's short-sighted, to be honest, to just do one shot per company, right? Like, wouldn't you want to make this like they did back in the 90s, like a 6-issue run or something, or a 4-issue run? You know, 2 issues done by DC, 2 issues done by Marvel, and interject like DC 1, issue 1 DC, issue 2 Marvel, issue 3 DC, issue 4 Marvel, or something like that, like they did back in the past. Like, how cool would that be? So you've got 4 months worth of hype, right? Instead of just 2 or 1, like if they put them out at the same time, you know? I don't know. Just to me, that seems a bit silly. You've got a massive opportunity here to tell a really epic story that people have been wanting for such a long time. Like, why wouldn't you go, okay, let's just make it a big bang, right? Even if it's over 2 months, maybe just put a couple books out over 2 months. There's 4 issues. Then you can put that in a collected edition. It'll be a decent chunky size. Well, I don't know, 4 80-page specials or something, like each issue's an 80-page giant size issue or something. I don't know. I want what I want, and I'm probably not going to get it, but I'm glad we're getting a crossover nonetheless, is what I'm saying. Anyway, I've spoken too much on this, but you can tell I'm excited. So anyway, cool. I'm glad that I've been able to talk about that now. So let me know what you think. Are you excited for this at all? You know, does this sound cool? Like, how could it not? Right? I'm interested to see if anyone catches this and leaves a comment and lets me know what their thoughts are, if they're not hyped at all. But if you're not, let me know why. Tell me. I'm really curious. But if you are hyped, I'm also curious as to know why. Because, let me know what you think it might be. Anyway, cool. We'll head into the final topic, which is He-Man, the new He-Man movie. Yes.